I had to make a part two for this particular news segment of Cyril Gane getting his house robbed in Paris. The reason why I wanted to do that was I wanted to share an experience that I had in Paris to perhaps give people a bit of some perspective of what had happened in this particular robbery. In other words, the type of psychological effect that it has on, let's say, the local French population, and then also just delving into the motivation of the minds of the robbers and the type of people that have done this, and the type of demographics of people that are in Paris that, let's say, engage in a certain level of crime. And we're going to talk about that. So in 2001, okay, I visited Paris, right? I was with my parents, and as we were strolling around, Paris, I was at a park. I ran across this old white couple, and you probably are looking at the thumbnail somewhere in the video section and thinking to yourself, okay, you know what? Yes, that was me in 2001 in Paris, dressed literally like a thug, right? I had the Mecca shirt, which was really big in the hip-hop world back in the days. And so as I was wearing that, I had baggy shorts. If you remember, back in the days in the northeast of the United States, that was a very prominent and big style back then, wearing your shorts like really low and really long. Baggy at the same time, and then maybe even having your pants sag and whatnot. But nonetheless, having the look of a stereotypical thug in the early 2000s. So this white couple just looked really nervous around me, right? And keep in mind, you got to remember, right? Being Arab in the United States is not like being Arab in Europe. Because if you're Arab in the United States, 9 times out of 10, maybe you're in the upper middle class of some sort, right? Whereas if you are an Arab European, in which those counterparts may live in impoverished, destitute, or just a little bit less privileged than, let's say, the counterparts of the American Arabs. But nonetheless, I go there, and to these white couple, they don't know that I'm from Old Bridge, New Jersey, or anything like that. They just know me as this Arab kid that's dressed like a thug. So next thing you know, I'm sitting next to the husband, and then I see his wife a few yards down, like waving him down, saying, hey, come here. Like almost like as if he was in danger. And it was one of the first times ever, and by the way, I was 16 years old, the first time that I've ever experienced some sort of racial discrimination or some sort of racial fear, okay? Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, because you got to understand, the people that live in the city perhaps may have experienced these types of situations, armed robbery, perhaps maybe strong arm robbery, or maybe even a home invasion of some sort. So these are all the things that have to be taken into consideration, and things that have to be taken as a factor of trying to understand the mentality of people. Also, let me tell you the other experience that I had as a tourist, an American tourist in Paris in 2001, to kind of put these things in perspective. So I'm in a street somewhere, right? And this time, this is not anywhere in Paris. This is like somewhere outside of Paris, maybe even near a suburb or within a countryside, because the goal was to take a train down to the south of France and whatnot, right? But in between that, there's a group of these guys, and by the way, I'm alone, right? I'm not with anybody. I'm in the street, and I don't know where this is. I know this isn't in Paris. This is like somewhere outside of it, maybe in a suburb. I see these French black dudes, a few Arab guys in a car playing Ain't Nothing But a Gangster Party by Tupac. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, man, yo, they got gangsters everywhere around the world. And you got to remember, this is before the pre-internet days. Because during the pre-internet days, if you were living in the Northeast, you really had this mentality that you thought you were the only gangster in the entire world. Because it's like as if we don't see gangsters anywhere. Sure, Cali, this and that. But within the circumference of America is all that I'm talking about. This is the mentality of a lot of people in that time frame. So I look at these guys and I'm like, man, these dudes look like they're strapped. They're in a BMW. They're like throwing gang signs. They look like West Coast gangbangers, but they're like French minorities of some sort. And they're gangster ass dudes and this and that. And then I'm thinking to myself, you know what? There's more to Paris and France than what people stereotype it to be. Because the way that people look at the Eiffel Tower, all these romantic trips and this and that, they don't take into consideration that there is a wealth and a poverty gap amongst its citizens that will cause a certain level of crime, that will cause a certain level of resentment. And then you got to take into consideration, how about the Arabs that live there and feel discriminated by the police, right? So these are things to take into consideration. Those dudes look like they were strapped. The ones that I was telling you about that was driving around in that BMW, they look like they were up to no good. They look like they were trying to intimidate people. Luckily, while I was walking around, I sort of blended in. And that's kind of the surprise of it all was, wow, all these guys were wearing the same thing. Some dudes were wearing like FUBU shirts, if you remember back in the 2000s. And then you remember some guys may wear, what was the big thing back then? Fat Farm. Fat Farm was another thing. You saw that around, and this is all in Paris, Sean John. So all of this was present. So it made me think, you know what? America is not the only place in the world that has all these gangster things going on. And then with all of that comes poverty and crime that comes and follows along with that. So those are the unfortunate things that happen. And maybe perhaps this is some sort of societal analysis of some sort as to try to understand why Cyril Gane got caught up in this. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of these real gangster-ass dudes that come from the ghetto that had very little to begin with, very disadvantaged background. So what are they going to do? Well, they got to do what is best for them. And unfortunately, it was a plan for them in mind to think, you know what? This guy is going to be in the cage. He's not going to be anywhere near us. And this is the perfect time to hit him. And maybe perhaps he's a little bit trusting in his security and would let his guard down. And this is what you got as a result of that. So hopefully, maybe my experience, I don't know if it gives you any insight of how Parisians are, from the upper class to the impoverished, from the minorities to the local native indigenous people that are French natives, whatever. All perspectives. But once again, this is unfortunate for Cyril Gane, and it is still something to talk about in terms of trying to understand the society that he's in. A lot of people only look at the fact that, okay, you know what, the UFC is going to be in this glamorous city and that's it. It's going to be great for the ESPN cameras, but it's more than that. In between these events and the arenas that are being used, these people inside and outside of it have lives. And welcome to the reality of Paris in the 2000s, and now the reality of modern day Paris as a result of Cyril Gane's unfortunate incident. Like and subscribe.